What's the best Shakespeare performance you've seen?
That's a good question. The best... I don't know if I can't think of the best Shakespeare performance I've seen. I can think of the ones that made the impression on me. I remember when I was at school, we had a trip to the Barbican, and there was a production of The Tempest. I don't know who directed it. I don't know who actually was Prospero, but I do remember it was Simon Russell Beale as Ariel. A very thin Simon Russell Beale, actually, so a long time ago, folks. And Greg Hicks as Caliban. And I remember that. I remember the very beginning of the play with Simon Russell Beale standing on a chair, I think, or some sort of platform in the middle of the stage, and there was a light bulb hanging down, and he just knocked the light bulb to start creating the storm. So that had made an impression on me. In terms of other Shakespeare, I suppose it'd be more film. I admire the Branagh films, especially the Hamlet, because most Shakespeare is cut, and he decided not to cut it, and it looks gorgeous. And actually, I've always quite liked Mel Gibson's Hamlet, Zeffirelli, and the fact that he cast him after watching Lethal Weapon, I think, is even better. So yes, that's my experience of Shakespeare.
I also liked Mel Gibson Hamlet, but the correct answer was my performance in rehearsal. What?
And your trousers, obviously.
What's your most treasured experience with Shakespeare?
My most treasured experience with Shakespeare. It was probably last year. I toured with a company called Illyria, who do open-air productions in The Merchant of Venice, and I was Shylock. And I'd done a few Shakespeare productions before, but never really got to grips with it. I felt that I hadn't really been taught the verse properly, or given any direction on the verse, and I felt that it was very much let's cram as many people onto stage and try and look like we're doing something when actually you've got no clue what you're doing. Whereas Oliver Gray, who runs Illyria, has a very clear idea about the way you should speak Shakespeare, especially in an open-air production. And he doesn't pander to an audience, which I love. He believes in speed, which is very refreshing. A lot of directors like to slow things down, and if you go slower, people will understand it. Well, actually, his philosophy is people speak quickly anyway most of the time, and actually, if you speak at proper pace, then actually people are going to get it a lot easier. And Merchant of Venice was a great play, and it was very funny, because it is a comedy, folks, and it was also very tragic, and there were some great moments, and to communicate that to an audience of 500 people sometime was very exciting.
What Shakespeare role, which you haven't played, would you like to have a little crack at?
What Shakespeare would I like to have a crack at? It would probably have to be something like Dickie 3. Let's be honest, Richard III is a great character because he takes the audience in there on the journey and they love him for it. So that's a brilliant character. I probably would, it's probably those Machiavellian characters a little bit, really. So Iago is another fabulous character for that. Probably those two stand out.
You're very physical as well, so I would love to see your Caliban.
Is that a euphemism, Ellis?
It's always a euphemism when it's from me. Once you've been cast in something, how do you personally go about building your character?
My process has changed over the years. It used to be very much when I was cast in something, I was so excited, I would just learn the lines, turn up and do it, and not really have a clue what I was talking about. The first production I was ever cast in was Romeo and Juliet, and I was cast in the part of Romeo. And I literally was on stage saying lines. I did not have a clue what I was talking about, but I just thought if I just stood there and said something that sounded sensible, it would come across that way. Now I realise I've actually got to know what I'm talking about. So yes, especially when it comes to Shakespeare, the important things there, of course, is that you need to know what you're talking about all the time. You need to look at the verse, you need to look at the prose. I'm not one for breaking it down so much that I have pages and pages of notes. I always like to quote from Alec Guinness in his autobiographies that if you need to make a note about something you're doing, whether it's a move or something, then realistically you haven't got it. You shouldn't need to make the note, it should go in there. And Alec Guinness, I think, was a very fine performer. So if he can do it, so can I.
He won an Oscar for Bridge on the River Kwai, as well as being nominated for Star Wars, which a lot of people forget. Okay, this film is very much about connecting with the modern world. How do you feel your character's arc or story connects to society today?
How does my character arc or story connect with the modern world? I think I might have touched on this briefly, Ellis, when I talked about the current political climate. So,
okay, let's go with that. Compare yourself to a modern politician, your character. Compare your character to a modern politician.
Now you're testing my knowledge of modern politicians, and that's a dangerous thing to do. I can't really, because when it comes to modern politics, they all blend into one. No one stands out as being a particular person. You can go, this is this person, this is this person. It's all a mess these days of just different things. Politics is an easy thing to sort of grab hold of and say, I can relate to modern things there. I think the whole sort of modern life thing of money and wealth being a sign of importance, and without that you're nothing. That we live in the 20th century. That changed to a certain extent. There was very much what it seemed to be from when it came to charity and the big appeals and so forth. There, it was very much looking at people who had nothing, but also the fact that these people who had nothing still were very important people, and they still made a difference. And I suppose media has given us a means to communicate that to the world now. Whereas back in Shakespeare's time, it was very much a hierarchy thing there. If you had no money, you had nothing. But ironically, actors were very poor people, so and they were communicating this to very rich people. So a bit of irony there in Shakespeare.
What challenged you about this role?
The biggest challenge is going to be when we get to Portugal, and that's, I think, going to be this case for everyone. It's interesting being in the rehearsal room with people who have done mostly Shakespeare on stage, and they've still got film experience and screen experience, but a lot of them seem to be forgetting the fact that this is not Shakespeare on stage. And that's changed actually over the last year of being rehearsals. When we first started that first read-through, it was very much everyone was giving a performance. And it became very clear, this is still a film, and literally the camera's going to be that close to you. You can't see that, everyone, but when I say that close, it's literally about 5 centimeters away from my face. So that's the difference there. And that's going to be the challenge for everyone, because and I think that's why it's so important that people need to really get past the verse and get past all the scary things they have with Shakespeare a lot of the time. And the lines are so embedded in there that actually what comes out is such a natural thing there that people forget that they're watching Shakespeare. And that's so difficult to communicate on film. And so that's going to be the biggest challenge for everyone.
Was there any expectation you had about your character before we started rehearsal that has since changed?
Yes, the biggest expectation, I think, was that I thought there was going to be much more of I didn't think he was going to be as cynical, as bitter, as distant as Maximianno saw him. I think even when it came to the final scene with Timon, I think there was, from what I'd seen of the National Theatre production, there was meant to be almost like two old people sitting together and relating to each other because they're cynical. And Maximianno doesn't want that. He wants me very much to be enjoying Timon's suffering. And the banter that is going on between us, but in a devilish way, in a way that is unhealthy, and that's, I suppose, the difference from the original expectation of what I thought it was going to be. So it's that unhealthy aspect of the character that I didn't think was going to be there for the entire piece.
And your final question. Everyone gets one. What will happen to your character after?
He's a character, because he's so distant from everyone else. It's not like Timon's death will have an impact on him where he will be mourning the loss of Timon. The only thing that he possibly will mourn is that he's had someone in more recent time to actually spar against. But he'll just keep on going. Because wealth means nothing to him, and he has a certain power within Athens because he doesn't care. There is an element of he will just carry on. Now, Alcibiades is taken charge, and there's certainly no love lost between Alcibiades and Apemantus, but even if he was put to death by Alcibiades, he will go there with his head held high and sticking two fingers up at Alcibiades. He doesn't fear anything, and if someone doesn't fear anything, then they can get away with anything, and he'll just keep going on doing what he does.
Do you have any experience with Timon of Athens before this project, i.e. on stage, seeing it, reading it at university or in club?
Do I know him personally? No. Do I have an experience of Timon of Athens personally? Yes, I had seen a production of Timon of Athens at the National Theatre. Again, Simon Russell Beale playing the part. It was a play I wasn't familiar with before I saw it. And I took away images from the play, and Simon Russell Beale was always brilliant, but I don't remember taking away a huge amount else from the whole production. I remember going again, that was a bit of a weird Shakespeare play. But yes, so apart from that, no, I hadn't seen it before. And really, when I came to audition for Maximianno and get the part, my experience and my knowledge was simply based on that production.
What do you take away from the story of Timon of Athens?
Fish and chips. No, what I take away from the story of Timon of Athens, it's an interesting one because I find my character is very separate from the story. He's an observer who likes to just comment and bitch about different characters, and really is very happy or unhappy with his lot, but it doesn't really influence him in that sense, which is quite interesting. I find that in this day and age, in this political climate, there's a lot of people who are very much an Apemantus who are very happy to sort of dig and bitch and moan about things that are happening and say things should be better and we should do things differently and everything like that, and be a little bit of a devil in someone's ear, but actually are not prepared to contribute themselves. So that's my sort of character, and that's, I think, certainly in the UK at the moment, there's a lot of people on social media like that.
And sadly in politics as well.
Yes. I'm not going to get political, but the role of ritual in this is very key in this film. How do you feel your character is part of or away from such ceremonies?
As far as ritual is very important to this civilization, he can't not be part of it. But he very much is, he uses it as basically something to just, again, to belittle people and to, as a weapon in that sense. He will call on the gods in the same way that Timon does and other people do, but he's doing it in a very cynical and ironic way. He doesn't believe in the gods. He's a character who doesn't believe in the gods. I think there's probably a lot of characters in this play who don't believe in the gods, but they say they do. He's very honest about the fact that he doesn't believe in any of that at all. Which makes his relationship with Praxilla very interesting, because she is very much part of that thing there. But it's almost like she is an angel for Timon and he's a devil. And the devil, in a sense, although he's part of this whole mythology and part of this thing there, is very happy just to throw doubt in there and be cynical and cause confusion in people. And that's very much what my character does.
Now, related to that, how do you feel about your role? Was it easy to relate to such embittered, grumpy old fuddy-duddy?
What are you saying, Ellis? Can I relate? Can I relate to the part of Apemantus? No, very difficult to relate to him, because I find with any character that I want to bring a bit of emotional connection to other people. It's very difficult just to be bitter and just be sarcastic and twisted and not really show that there was some sort of history there where you maybe were different in the past, and that's not really what Maximianno wants with Apemantus. So he describes him as the Joker in The Dark Knight, an agent of chaos, and I found that very difficult to relate to, because I can't understand those people. But I'm getting closer to it, I find. But if a bit of human emotion does creep through there, then I apologize. That's simply just David invading the character.